Postcard representing a link to go to a website where there is access to a webinar which is called A Tale of Two Timelines, and that discusses Project Looking Glass in pretty much all of its incarnations and all of its facets, from the physical to the metaphysical to the paranormal to the simple story of it, and the story of my involvement personally with a certain chapter of that Looking Glass history relative to the guardians of the Looking Glass. So that was an impetus and a trigger for me to dive into that story and put together something which analyzed the claims made by all of the participants in project, all the whistleblower leaks and all the information that surfaced has a sort of common thread. And I took that thread and I tied it to science and to the modern times, to the old times, and tied it into what could be coming toward us, and used it in a way to help us find a way to build a new timeline, a future timeline, because really that's what it's about. It's about timelines. And so it's about understanding what timelines are. It's understanding the difference between transhumanist timeline or materialistic timeline versus the timeline that it will develop hidden, dormant abilities that we as humans have not really even tapped into, at least not on a large scale. We have anomalous people on the earth that have special gifted talents, but those are only indicators for us that we have much more waiting for us. And I think there's also part of the messaging in the timeline material is that we have the ability to create a virgin timeline that nobody knows, nobody can predict, that is even something that the universe itself would love to experience, because we've got these repeated loops. We can go back and have ancient civilizations like Lemuria, Atlantis. These are telling us that there's seemingly a cyclical karmic loop that we keep repeating, but we don't have to. I think the universe wants to find a new timeline, new territory that isn't falling back into that same old pattern, and that pattern needs to be broken. That's what this is about.
Could we define a couple of things? The project, the operation you're referring to, Looking Glass?
Yeah, Looking Glass is, on the one hand, a physical device which was discovered through our interaction with extraterrestrial beings, which turned out to be human beings from the future who told us about this technology. They told us where to find it. And in a sense, they told us where to find building plans, so that we built those things and we began to work with them. So that's the Looking Glass mechanically, but it also is connected to putting a mechanical device in the proximity of something called a stargate. And that's where the magic, so to speak, happens. That's where we see the time streams depicted, which are like lingering in the field. In our film Solar Revolution, we had a neuroscientist by the name of Michael Persinger talk about how the Earth's magnetosphere is like a giant repository for every single resonant thought, idea, spoken action, everything humans have ever done is kind of stored, like a giant, if you think of a giant hard drive. So, and in our film Packing for Mars, we talked about a chronovisor, which one of the protagonists said he was, as a child, he experimented with something called a chronovisor, where he went and traveled in time. It's a different time peering device other than a looking glass. It's a much different technology, and yet it still gives us this access to the idea that things are stored in a field that enables you to go into different times in the future and in the past and recapture stored resonant patterns which were made and created when those things were actually created, whenever they were created.
How do we know these things?
How do we know them?
When you say humanoid from the future, our future...
We know them through the combination of whistleblowers that have come forward and told us about their involvement in specific projects relative to Looking Glass, as well as the chronovisor. We know it from often these whistleblowers can't provide much in evidence. So what we always do in our films, Tonia and I, is that we try to follow the science to find evidence that there might be something to it. So our work is always, on the one hand, open to the paranormal, and yet at the other hand, we try to find actual connections to people that are working with this kind of technology, what kind of results they've had. And also other forms, any kind of substantive information. It could come from anything, even like instrumental transcommunication messages, which are messages that come from other dimensions. Do they have a relationship to this? Do they actually say something which substantiates it? Today, Tonia was at a workshop where a woman does hypnotherapy, and in some of those cases, the people have memories of events which match almost exactly what the J-Rods were talking about, these future humans that came back, what they look like, that they're from the future, that there's different timelines. So these kinds of things, you have to kind of find a way to piece together abstract and diverse elements to give you a better picture of what this secret technology is all about and where it came from, and if it really could be, or if it's just some figment of someone's imagination.
Is that time travel accessible or available to us in our day?
Well, I believe that people are working with it in our day, but it's just not available to everybody. We have a recording of General Quast in 2019, I believe it was, at a conference for military generals and intel people, making a keynote address talking about how teleportation and wireless, electricity and things like this are reality. It's just that there's no investment in them because the commercial market sees no way to profit from them. So I believe absolutely we would have some of this technology at our disposal for the common man if we wanted to make the investment.
What have we learned from these future beings about the future of our planet? In other words, did they start here, and are they coming back to?
They started here. They went through a cataclysm of sorts. They went through a series of turbulent events that took place in their past, which is our immediate future. And they came back now to just before when that happened for the various different reasons. One faction came back to harvest genetic material of their ancestors because of the mutations that took place from tens of thousands of years of exposure. And the others came back here to inform us of spiritual capacity that we have that is able to transcend these events. So you have these two factions that are opposing one another, and both are leading to a different timeline.
So what do you make of the events of globalism today?
Globalism? Well, globalism to me, it can mean you're talking about materialist globalism, right? Materialism. I mean, you could look at the globalist connection that we all have as human beings, but that's, I think, still in the distance. But there's a really serious globalist movement which is trying to bind us together via commercial materialist process. So they're trying to eliminate things like nationhood, sovereignty, diverse currencies, and they're trying to homogenize us from the perspective of commerce as well as from the perspective of vaccines, for example. Vaccines could play a big role in the future of people who are considered globalists because vaccines are the key to getting under our skin, getting within our bodies.
What's the attitude towards this from Europe, for instance?
It's universal. It's the same. People in Europe are just as aware and ignorant as here. There's people who are aware, they're in the minority, and there's people who are ignorant, they're in the majority. And there's, but like here and in other English-speaking countries, there's an escalation of amount of people that are sort of what they call waking up to these realities. There's more of them than ever before, and this trend is also happening in Europe. But, I think there's many more here because I think you have a more liberal or flexible society that's not quite as brain brainwashed or mind controlled as, for example, Germans are. Germans have been heavily influenced through mind control since the end of the Second World War.
Now, one would think that Germany would be the most sensitive to media propagandizing and brainwashing.
No, I mean, yeah, you would think, but that's because, and that's a very good point. That's what many people think. Would assume. But I mean, I've looked into that topic, and I've realized that, Seft and Delmer said, the success of a warfare against the country is only completed when the second generation of descendants from the people in the war actually repeat the programming that they were given, to hate, their culture and to oppose their culture, and then it's successful. But they're always fighting the weeds coming up of truth, the nasty weeds of truth. So it's an ongoing process for them. But it's very clear that they are eradicating certain ideas of nationhood and sovereignty, which were very prevalent in the early 20th century in many European countries, not just Germany, but also Spain and Italy. And, this whole idea of fascism, if you look at the word fascist itself, the symbol for it is a bundle of sticks that are held together by a cord. And it means that the people band together to fight an internal enemy. And so this is very interesting because that's the classical definition that goes back to the Latin definition of fascist, right? Fascist. So it's been slanted. Now it's a dirty word, just like nationalism now is a dirty word. They or even the idea of family, has become a dangerous word because it's like gender, definitions. Male and female are becoming dangerous ideas to this new liberal world that they're trying to sculpt around us.
Is it just coincidence that these memes are growing throughout the Western countries independently, coincidentally?
No, they're being orchestrated simultaneously by a supranational organization. So, nation states are somewhere down the line, and I think many of the people that are at conferences like this show us those pyramids where government is somewhere down near the bottom, and then you've got these secret societies reaching the top of the pyramid who are really the ones dictating what policy is, where it will be done, and what countries first, etc.
Would you show us your films that people can buy?
Yeah, absolutely. So this one here is called Solar Revolution, and it was done together with Dieter Breurs, who is a biophysicist, a German who wrote a bestseller book called Revolution 2012. And we took that book and we basically went around and interviewed many of the scientists and tried to back up the idea of when the Mayans talked about how we would be hit by a Hunab coup that would elevate our consciousness and push humanity into another level of consciousness altogether, a quantum evolutionary leap. We actually explored the science behind that ideology in this film. So it's actually one of its kind. Really, there's no other film like it. Even though we did it 10 years ago, it's still cutting edge material. Even in fact, when you think about it, what is 2012? That's one of the questions in the film. When is 2012? So we don't know. Times have been shifted, dates have been shifted, right? So the fact is, we are experiencing what we're talking about in this film right now. These cosmic energies are coming at us, and they are affecting us. So that's what this film gets into. Yeah.
Okay.
Next is another film that we worked on at the same time called Klaus Dohner Chronicles. Klaus Dohner is an Austrian out-of-place artifacts researcher who has discovered, in his life, in his career, hundreds of artifacts given to him by people from various parts of the world which do not fit into the normal historical picture of the world. So technologies, bones of giants, for example, like this on the top here, for example, is a 13-step pyramid that's dated to be at least 26,000 years old. At the bottom of this pyramid is an engraving of a star system showing the Orion star cluster, saying that the Son of Man, this is the Son of the Creator, comes. This predates the Illuminati or anything, right? So, and many, many others. He did an exhibition in Vienna called the Unsolved Mysteries exhibition of over 400 different artifacts which are unexplainable by conventional archaeology. So it's a good way to bend your mind out of the conventional idea of where we came from, what is history. And this one here is called Packing for Mars. This one is based on a best-selling fictional novel written in 1978 by Leslie Watkins, but Mae Brussel, the investigative researcher in America, considered that book to be her most dangerous book in her library because it's written like fiction, but many people believe it's a fact, and it has to do with the secret colonization of Mars, and a secretive group that organizes and prepares that and actually makes that happen. So we decided to go after that story when we heard an interview with Laura Eisenhower and Andrew Basiago talking about being recruited or being involved in jump room projects to Mars. That made me go, okay, I want to know if this is really true. So, and in fact, that's the film that set in motion me even meeting Tonia Madenford, and shortly after I began filming.
Can we get you in the shot?
Yeah.
We keep referring to Tonia.
A couple of days into the filming process, I was at a house, and she was also at that house. It was not supposed to be there. I wasn't supposed to be there. We collided, and we ended up spending the next 5 years.
We did a road trip, basically, going out looking for all the teleportation time travel locations connected to Project Pegasus.
Yeah.
And it's a wild ride down the rabbit hole, but it's very, very interesting in terms of disclosing secret space programs and what's really happening.
Yeah. So this
Today.
one goes down the rabbit hole in terms of secret space and in terms of, is there a colony on Mars? Could there be a colony on Mars? What technology is there? What whistleblowers are there? What is there, like all of our material, to substantiate that thesis? And so we just go down the rabbit hole and we show people what we found and let them make up their own minds. So that's our newest film project.
Terrific. Where will people find these to watch at home?
Well, the easiest way is to, there's several.
You can get the DVD on Amazon, you can stream on a company called Projector. You can go to www.packingformarsmovie.com or solarrevolutionmovie.com.
Or screenaddiction.com.
Screenaddiction.com has all the links to all 3, 4 movies. So.
Or my website, frankjacob.com, with a C and no S. And at the top of that website is a link to get to not only to purchase the DVDs, but also to go stream all of these films are streamable, and it's also a link to get to the CyberHive website, cyberhive.tv, where you can access the webinar, Tale of Two Timelines.
Thank you.
Is it all in English?
It's in multiple languages, but mainly
Even
it was
French, German, English.
Yeah, like this one's in French, German, and English.
Is it subtitled in French, or is it dubbed?
This one is English and dubbed into German. So this is English dubbed into German as well, and
meaning dubbed audio.
Dubbed audio, yeah. Multiple characters playing multiple roles, and this one is dubbed into German, or this one is originally English dubbed into German and French. Yeah. And this one is just English.
Thanks for speaking with us. You had a tremendous turnout here at the show, and aren't you speaking again tomorrow?
I'm going to be doing a workshop tomorrow at 8 p.m. So if you really want to go down and do more digging into the whole Looking Glass and timeline story, come to the workshop.